welcome back. We are continuing on our weekly theme of doing a catch up with us both on how the move has been going. I think we're at our 5 weeks of being here. Is it 6 weeks? I've lost count now.
Just over 5 weeks. 5 weeks Thursday. It's Sunday the 9th. No, Sunday the 11th.
Okay.
No. So it would have been 5 weeks on the Thursday just gone.
Yeah, and I thought, well, you guys have been commenting so much and saying how much you've enjoyed the catch-ups with us and just getting to know all the detail about what's happening, so we thought we'd continue to update you all. I'm trying to think now. I know what we want to update you on, and it's quite a big one because we've been talking a lot about it, but we've not actually in one piece explained what actually happened with the housing. So for this particular update, because we finally now have the key, the digital key to our new home, we thought we would at least update you on how that particular journey went and kind of what went wrong, but in one story for you rather than the little bits, because it hasn't been that easy to record finding a home, which is why we haven't put any vlogs out specifically on that. We do plan to share a lot of the footage of us viewing the homes and that process, but we're not entirely sure how that is going to be done just yet. But the upside is we have a place, but how did we actually get there?
With much pain that other people don't seem to be suffering with.
I mean, okay, the first thing that we had to both decide was whether we were going to rent or buy somewhere, and you were very pro buying somewhere if we could. We're
going all the way back. All right, yeah. So we've never rented ever.
No.
So Selena lived with my family when we were how old? 19, 20?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And straight from there, we went and bought our first flat, and then we bought a house, and then we bought another flat. That's how it went, I think. I don't know. Or apartment, as it's more commonly known. And I've never rented. The only rentals we've done is if it's been an Airbnb, so that really short gap between leaving our house and buying the next apartment. We rented for 2 months via Airbnb.
And it was super expensive, and I was like, no, this is not good. This is way too much. We're better off buying
something in my very being just doesn't allow me to accept paying other people money to profit from. So I find it really difficult, and I understand that in some cases renting is better and probably more cost efficient. It's definitely not better. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll explain how we got there. So before coming out, I'd put in quite a lot of work into securing a mortgage. It's really not that easy to get a mortgage while you're in the UK with no US credit for a US property, but it can be done. And the short of how you do that is you have to have 30% of the property as a down payment. You pay a slightly higher rate, and for this particular bank you have to hold $10,000 in cash at all times in an account, as well as at the point that you close you have to be able to show that you have 1 year's worth of mortgage payments and 1 year's worth of taxes in that account. Now you can lose that once you've completed, but up until that point you have to be able to show that.
So that's quite a lot of money, in addition to the fact that you need to pay your deposit or down payment, as they call it here, that you have to be able to show at that point.
So we kept it on a back burner as a consideration, because ultimately it all pays back in the end. If you buy, after a few years you forget the down payment, you'd have saved up some more money, and you live in essentially in a savings account at that point. So that went on the back burner. We arrived here.
The thing with buying a property straight away, we didn't know where we was going to like, but I think I know now it wouldn't have changed my opinion on where we bought in the end. I think I would have been very set on the idea of buying somewhere here. But there was this period where we thought, actually, okay, the rental gives us a bit of time, we can build up US credit, get better interest, and you don't need so much money up front. And it doesn't mean we can't do other things to make money at that same time, like investing. So it's a balancing act of what we thought was right. And the other thing as well, if we bought somewhere, that meant we would have had to have been in a temporary place on a month-to-month Airbnb, rental, apartment like we are for longer. And I've really got to the point now where I just want to feel a bit more settled and not living like that.
So it become quite difficult. If it was in the UK, it'd been really easy. But firstly, we were trying to work out where do we like. It was always between Henderson and Summerlin. I, before arriving, was leaning towards Henderson, and the main reason for that is
that's true,
when you're not here, you can see there's so much more to do there on paper.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot more availability of all of the things that I thought I'd want to do. Once we had arrived, Henderson immediately, I think day 1 or day 2, I was like, no.
I think we both knew quite early on, because Henderson had similar areas-ish, where they're really nice. It looks really, it's quiet, peaceful, paved. But then as soon as you come out, it's chaos for me.
It's quite busy, less well kept. So that just wasn't the lifestyle that we were looking for. So then immediately we knew at that point, okay, we're going to have to find ourselves some time. So to make a decision, you're going to have to buy a couple of months. And at that point, you would have committed to rental, and that potentially puts you 15 months into this journey before you would be able to buy somewhere that would have suited our purposes. So I think really quite quickly we decided, forget it, let's go into rental. We'll suck it up for 1 year. We'll look for something relatively cheap. So I think initially it was under 3,000.
Yeah, because we thought the real aim is to buy somewhere in a year's time. Therefore, the property that we were picking now didn't need to be particularly amazing. It just needed to meet like minimum needs, and ideally pay as little rent as possible this year. Which didn't go quite to plan.
It didn't go to plan at all.
Because we'd already we explained to the agent the areas we wanted to pick and look at, and we only focused in Summerlin. We didn't bother with Henderson in the end, and we said anything typically around from 2,000 if it was 1,800 grey, if we could get that. But up to 2,800 was really the top mark. Maybe 3,000, but we were really sitting at 2.5. And properties did come up, and had we have been able to accept something like Henderson or south of Summerlin, we probably would have been able to get that. And in fact, there's one house that is in the video that's coming, that was 26 or 28. Something
huge,
like that. Really nice house,
landscaped, garden was, yard was amazing, the pool was amazing, it had a putting green. But this is where we had to make some compromises. So once we had arrived, Selena just loved West Summerlin. That was it. I could have settled elsewhere, but it was really important to be in this area for Selena, which then means 2,600 doesn't get you too much here.
Yeah, the issue was whenever all the properties we saw on that first day of viewings, I think we saw 8 in total, 8 properties.
Yeah, at least 8.
I mean, we didn't really like any. I was willing to settle for some properties that weren't that great because they were in the right location. Ant was like, no way. They were not acceptable at all.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is we have come from 2 new builds, and even the short-term rental we had was a new build. They come with sharp edges, clean lines, modern interiors, modern appliances, and I really value that. So my favourite house style in the UK or builder is Red Row, which give you the classic look on the outside, so from 1930s, but with a modern interior, and that's the kind of lifestyle that I enjoy. Here what you get is really nice exteriors, so they have these Mediterranean villa styles with ultra dated interiors, and not just the look, the things are falling apart.
Yeah, and some of them are quite dark inside as well, which is not good.
So we're still talking about 2,600 at this point, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that feels like a complete waste of money. So we're paying 2,600 literally to be in the area. The houses were not suitable. So then we decided we were going to have to
up the budget. So that first day of viewing was basically not wasted, because it gave us...
It was a lesson.
And gave us perspective on what was available in that range. We then told the agent what we was looking for and upped the budget to even 4,000.
Yeah.
If it really had everything. Within reason, not everything, but as in it was nice enough.
Yeah, so effectively doubling the budget. And then even then.
So then we went out, I think 3 days later, and And again, that whole process is really annoying. It's the best way to describe it, or frustrating, because what you think you see online isn't necessarily available. It might be available, but the time you request to go and view it, it's not available. So you're literally going back and forth. Actually, you took over at that point.
Yeah, in the end, because Selena was working, I ended up just taking over searching, sending to the agent. And I mean, it could literally be a case of you send over 10 that have just gone online and only 2 of them would actually be available for various reasons. So it can be a really frustrating and definitely time consuming doing that here. I don't know whether that's across the US, but definitely specifically to Summerlin and Summerlin West, you have to be prepared to burn a lot of time searching for the right home.
And then it was take 2 of the home search, and then so I think it was 3 days after the first day we went back out again, and we again viewed 8 different properties ranging from, I can't remember, like 2,000 up to, I think 3,800 was the most expensive.
Yeah, I think so.
That trip was a bit more successful in that I think we'd learnt from the first one and started to see properties that we actually preferred. They were more in our style. What was really disappointing for me the first time is seeing these houses and knowing that they weren't really a representation of what you were seeing online. And to that point, there was a comment made by somebody who is moving to, I think she's moving to New York, and she mentioned whether she should just do an online viewing and get her lease up and going before, so that she doesn't have to stay in a hotel. I do not recommend that. Unless you've got somebody that you know and trust that can go and view the place for you, do not do it, because we learned a lot.
And I think I wouldn't just say that you know and trust. Somebody that understands what you value in a property is massively important, because our agent, and I mean, I got a little bit frustrated, but to be fair to her, she did actually do a good job. She listened, she searched for the properties, but what was frustrating is it's really hard to convey what we value. So it's hard enough to convey that to somebody in England that's probably seen the properties that we like, but somebody here looks at 1970s wooden cupboards and goes, amazing, this is exactly what you would want. We don't like wood. So then the next time you preview a property, you're like, don't show us anything with wood, which is ironic because we moved to
and I think that's what confuses her, because the things that we did like in some that she couldn't really interpret, and that's not her fault. I think that's very particular to us, which is why you do need to see it yourself. And it's not just the property, it's literally the road it's on, the surrounding streets. On the second one we saw a house really nice, but the surrounding roads were really not good.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're talking about the furnished one, absolutely beautiful inside. 3,000 furnished, come with a pool table, decent pool. It was small, but it was still a pool. Really nicely furnished upstairs, but the area just wasn't what we wanted, and it was too far from where we wanted to be. So again, she had found a nice property, but the wrong area. So you can see how these things just property after property is something. And she kept saying to us, you're going to have to compromise. And I'm like, I'm not going to compromise. So yeah, we went out for another day. Did we go out for a third? How did we find the one that we've chosen?
So we did 3 trips in total.
Yeah, I thought so.
On that second trip, we did find a property that we really liked.
Yes.
And it was probably the nicest home inside, in that, not the most modern, but the owners had been really savvy with what they'd done.
It was really tastefully done, where they could do inexpensive upgrades but really just lifted that face value aspect. They had done it, and you could see they were in there doing minor repairs, because there was little signs up which I had missed that don't turn the shower on. So if you ever watch this video, sorry, because I turned the shower on, it was wet paint. And it's good because you have to test these things in the homes, because they don't necessarily rent you stuff with it working.
And I quite like that with this house. The owners seem to care about the state that the property was in, and we saw many properties where the owners really didn't care.
And in fact, the video before this, so the one that's currently out, there is a clip in there of this property that we're talking about, so you go and watch that. This house was really nice. I liked it. The only thing we could criticise it for was the backyard was tiny. It was effectively a wall that fenced in the back part of the property. So you maybe had, what would you say, like 3 meters
across?
No, not across, because it's the width of the building,
Width
which
of the
is
building.
much bigger. I'm talking about the
I
distance from
don't
the
even
back
think
door.
it was 3 metres.
Well, there you go.
I,
So
I,
it's
I did,
potentially
didn't
under.
feel, maybe it was, but the perception wasn't that, and the wall was really high.
Yes, it felt like a prison.
Yeah.
So that was the downside. However, we were prepared to compromise here because the house had everything else that we wanted. And I checked the internet speed, which is important to us. So they had the right internet and the house looked great.
Yeah, it was 2,850 and we were willing. Our agent, so the process is, as soon as you find a home that you want to put an application in, your agent will then call the realtor and double check that there's no applications in and it's not off the market. They confirm no applications. If we make an application now online, we will be the first ones in. And we thought, okay, fine, we'll do that. However, we were concerned because we didn't want to apply without knowing that they were going to consider our personal situation.
Yeah, this is really important. And if you're thinking about coming here, it's really important to stay on top of these things, because with the application comes an application fee and they charge you per applicant. So it's $75 in this particular case. It can be up to $100 per applicant. So we really wanted to make sure that before we pay you this money, here is our situation. We're going to present everything to you. Will this present a problem? Because if it does, then we'll make a consideration on whether we want to take that risk or not.
Exactly. And so we got their address and decided to go to their office instead of just doing the online application, because on the application, I started it in the car. It straight away asks you for your current address and your landlord there, and then your previous address and your landlord for references. There was nowhere to put that you've never had a landlord before, so it wasn't even set up in that way. And I thought it's going to be better if we just go to the office and try and apply in person.
Yeah, rather than make the assumption. And then I wouldn't have blamed them if they said, look, it was very clear on our form, you filled this in, your application fee is now gone because you don't fit how we set this form up.
Criteria. Yeah. We got to the office, we explained our situation. I think in total was there 30 minutes maybe?
Yeah, we good amount of time to explain our situation and to explain, firstly, that we're landlords, secondly, that our financial standing is good, and thirdly, that we can present you with over 10 years of financial history, because we had print-offs of our Experian or Equifax credit reports from the UK.
Offer letter of employment in the US. I said I would, and because we met the property manager for that particular house. She came in and she was very much, oh no, not a problem, just apply online. In fact, for your current landlord, put corporate housing.
Yeah.
Which didn't really make sense. I thought, okay, fine. And then she gave me her work email to explain all of this, so that I could follow up the application with some extra documentation and to remind her that it was us that applied.
Yep. So we sent over our entire lives. So everything, how much we had earned over the past few years, the
Bank
properties that we
statements.
owned, mortgages, the lot, everything. It's really easy to work out whether you're in good standing or not from all of that. Bearing in mind that we're told that this is a really hot market, everything's turned around in minutes, hours, days at the longest, and it went quiet for
Days.
Yeah.
We did hit Easter weekend, and that was a bit confusing, but we did not hear from them, and the only message we got was that it's Easter weekend, the owners are doing some stuff on the house, we'll probably hear back on Monday. That was it. And I had a bad feeling. I didn't really know whether to trust that, and that's why we then went out and saw more properties on the Saturday.
So I had emailed, so I don't even know how to describe what I'm like, but as soon as we put the application in, as soon as we spoke to that person, I wasn't comfortable. So I had messaged the agent and said, keep looking. And I know for her that was a bit of a, oh God, here we go again. But I just had the feeling that this didn't feel right.
And she did assume it's because we didn't really love the property. Bearing in mind, none of these properties we love anyway. Yeah. So just to be clear, it's not, and none of these are our dream home. They need to fit our purpose. But she thought we didn't like it enough, which is why we wanted to see another one. No,
I still like it.
I preferred that house actually over the one we ended up with.
So we went out, viewed, how many more? It was meant to be 3, and I think it ended up being 2.
Just 2.
Because one of them had gone.
In the end, and we saw this other house, and it's in the pretty much what, 5 minutes away from the other one, if that.
Yeah, if it's just around the corner, it's
But
maybe 3-minute drive.
Nicer in other ways, the close it was on, how it's situated, but the main thing was really the backyard, the pool, the covered patio bit.
Yeah, it had enough of what the previous one had, not as well kept, but it also had the pool there, so we were prepared to accept that it was $3,400, which I still sit there some mornings like, are we doing the right thing? It's a lot of money, but it does provide us with exactly what we need. The garage, I think, was also bigger. There
were lots of things overall. We don't prefer the actual house, but what it offers overall was better and definitely worth the money, the difference. Yeah. But so with that, we decided to apply for that one as well, which is another $150, so $75 per applicant. And I treated it exactly the same way. I spoke to them, explained our situation, emailed them directly. I said, if you've got any questions, please come to me. Also, my employer's there as well if you need any extra verification.
Yep.
So treated both of these realtors in exactly the same way with the same amount of information.
Exactly. And we got different results.
Very.
There was still a hiccup in this one. So we understood that potentially, we've been told that here it's not uncommon to ask for 2 months worth of deposit. So the normal, if you've got perfect credit, is 1 month, but potentially if they see you as a risk,
it does say that quite commonly.
It's up to 2 months. I'm point blank, that is not going to happen with me, and I'm very clear when it comes to financials about how I will handle the finances. Now, if that doesn't align with what you're doing, fine, we'll go our separate ways, but that's just not how it's going to be. I'm not going to accept that you're going to have, in this case, $7,000 sitting in your account versus mine. So what had happened?
Well, that leads into the next bit, really, because we had kind of known that the fact that we didn't have any US credit history, there was this possibility, but we were hoping that they could use discretion on our situation to realise that we were not really a risk at all, and the income that we was getting was more than was fine for the rental. Then there were 2 things that happened in parallel. Monday comes along, so this is Easter Monday. The first one we had applied to, they are now talking to our agent, and I also think this doesn't help at all because I don't know what my agent is explaining, but they're having a conversation and they go to the agent. Well, because the applicants do not have any, they didn't come up in the credit search. Of course it didn't. We told you it wouldn't. We have never lived here before. Mm-hmm. But because of that, we want 10% extra rent per month.
Which is ridiculous, because if we present a risk of paying the rent, increasing the rent doesn't reduce the risk.
Absolutely.
Increasing the security deposit would do, and that would be a conversation, because what you're doing there is effectively saying, right, we'll take 2 months. If you don't pay on that first month, we've got that and we can kick you out. As an example, if you don't pay midway through, at least you have that.
At least it makes sense. The 10% actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like, how moronic is that? It didn't even make any. And Ant knew the moment I saw that message, it's like, I could tell this has really bothered you, because it's a point of principle. Nothing at that moment made sense. I explained to the agent at that point, go back to them and say to them, well, they've been
dishonest throughout the whole process.
They're scamming people at that point.
Because the 150 is non-refundable. Even though we'd explained our situation, they'd already claimed that money, and they were saying, basically, if we want to proceed, we have to at least agree to pay them 10% more money on the rent, bringing it up to, what would it have been, $3,100.
$3,100, and
once you've done that, you've soured the relationship. It doesn't matter even if you back down from there, it is done at that point.
And so I explained to her, just go back to them and say, because of what they've done, had they have said to us up front in the office, because of your situation, we may ask you for more rent, which wouldn't have made sense. But had they have done that, at least we would have made that decision. But they decided at that point to say, no, unfortunately, the costs have been, we've already, I can't remember what excuse.
Guess it's admin costs.
Yeah, have already gone through, so they can't have their money back. No, that was their response. So I was really annoyed, but decided.
I tried not to get annoyed because I needed to remain focused on finding somewhere to live. So another thing that we have to throw in, at that point, I think we only had 1 week to be out of the apartment.
And then we didn't know also what this other house was going to say, whether they were also, I was guessing they were going to ask for 2 months security deposit, which I knew Ant was 100% not going to agree to. then we're going into, okay, what's our backup here?
Yeah, so we started scrambling around. So whilst trying to manage both of those, we were looking at month-to-month rentals just as a backup should we get kicked out in a week.
And looking into other mortgage options.
Yeah, so at that point we then started up another mortgage option all at the same time, and looking into hotels just in case we needed to. But what actually happened was, and I can't remember, I'm terrible at remembering the sequence of things. Our agent got back and said that the other ones are happy with our application. However, they wanted 2 months down payment. What's it called?
Security
deposit.
And Ant suggested, well, go back to them and say, we're not willing to do the 2 month security deposit, but we're willing to pay you 2 months rent up front instead, plus the normal security deposit that you would pay.
That went over to the agent. The agent communicated that to the other agent.
She came back saying great news. So that evening, so I think at this point we've gone for a whole day, and I think around 8 o'clock in the evening she's got back to us saying great news, they've accepted, fires off all the email internally to my relocation consultant that's managing the whole move, saying, you know, really good, we found a home, all sorted. Then
was it the following morning or 2 hours later?
No, about 2 hours later.
Yeah, no, they want the 2 months security deposit
plus the 2 months up front. So they've completely misunderstood. They've understood that we were willing to pay the 2 month security deposit plus 2 months up front.
Yeah, so
we were
at this point,
no way. And I just thought, this is ridiculous.
So yeah, I was particularly frustrated at that point, and I don't know if it was that evening or the following day, I decided to send them an email directly. So take the agent out and just say, look, there's been a misunderstanding, and I think I worded it fairly politely. But what I was saying is, you've misunderstood. This was our offer to you, and I explained our situation. I would hope that the fact that we're landlords, our credit is great, would mitigate any perceived risk. Now, we're prepared to go ahead on the original agreement as we presented it to you. Otherwise, we'll be on our way. And wasn't even that long later, she come back and just said, yep, great, on the basis of what you've said, we're happy to take it as that. So we ended up with the place for the right amount. We ended up paying, I think it was a month and a half.
Yeah, because obviously we're part way through April, so you pro-rata that amount, and it was fine. You would think after the point then that you've secured the home, everything is smooth sailing, and I would say it was ish.
It was smooth sailing according to how the US works.
It's just not.
And nothing here is smooth. So for somebody from, and I can only talk to people from England, you wouldn't find this process smooth. It's painful in its finances and the way they handle their finances. So the first thing that we had to do was get a cashier's check, and we'll insert the video of us driving to the bank. So let me just explain this process and how ridiculous it is. In order to pay somebody, you would imagine that you could just transfer the money, pay on a credit card, pay on a debit card, whatever. You cannot. So you have to leave the place where you are, drive to the bank, you go into the bank, you write on a piece of paper who you want to pay, their address, the amount of money. You go to the cashier, you hand them that piece of paper. The cashier takes the piece of paper, types it into the computer, takes another bit of paper, puts it into a machine, prints what they've typed incorrectly onto the piece of paper, tells you, yeah, we're going to charge you $15 for this
she
service.
Didn't actually tell us. We just saw the total after she didn't tell us.
So you get charged $15 for this process. Bad enough, you then have to take that cashier's check, get in your car, drive from where you are, which is now the bank, which is where you wasn't because you was at home before, and you go from the bank to the person that you're paying, you hand it to them, they then take it, realise there's a spelling mistake on it, says it should be okay, I'm not sure, and then they have to deposit this somewhere. I don't know the back end of this
what they do, no.
thing, but it gets deposited
they
somehow.
A photocopy and give that and show that they've received your cashier's check, and you have a receipt from the bank as well.
Yeah, so that's the initial part. So we pay the security deposit,
and so what that means in terms of the rental application is that they take that house off the market at the point that you've paid your security deposit.
Yes, so it's effectively a holding deposit as well. So we'd completed all of that, and this particular realty company agent actually has an online portal, online system, and on there it says that you can pay by auto pay or bank pay, whatever it is. So I made the assumption, and this was my fault, that we were able to use that system to pay the next part of it. So bearing in mind we have to pay a month and a half, so that was the remaining balance, plus you had to pay a key deposit and a cleaning fee deposit. So there was still an outstanding balance of over $6,000. So fast forward a few days, we were going to, I think it's from Wednesday to Friday, we were told to come in, collect the keys or the key code. So silly.
And sign the lease at that point.
Oh yeah, and sign the lease.
That's all, they send that electronically as well.
Yep. So drove from our place to the agent, arrived at the agent, she said, oh, have you got your check? And I said, oh, I thought I could pay it online because you've got night. She said, oh, you can, but there's a 3% charge, which would have equated to 180 some odd dollars, which
too much.
Not just paying somebody for the fun of it. She's like, oh, you're going to have to go to the bank. Now, this is lunchtime. And I'm thinking, oh
and
my
in a busier
God,
area.
and in a much busier area than where we live. So had we have known, we could have done it right in Summerlin and it would have been a 10-minute process. So again now, and I'm labouring this point because this is how ridiculous it is. We've driven there, we now had to get in our car, drive 7 or 9 minutes down the road, park up. So then it gets out of the car, we see that people are queuing outside of the bank. She then spends half an hour repeating that process of on the paper to the cashier
I was
checking
smarter this time because last time I didn't know that.
We'd learned.
Yeah, I didn't know that you had to write on a piece of paper where you wanted your money to go, how much. I didn't know if they had a proper form or you show something on your phone.
Yeah.
So this time I used that 30 minutes, that precious time that I had queuing to write everything before I got to the cashier.
So reverse that process. No, I think it was an hour in total.
Oh, it was an hour we wasted.
An hour wasted, hand the check over to them, and then finally we got our keys and our lease agreement was all signed. Now, I don't know how this works everywhere, but the agent that we dealt with was really good. They're super relaxed. They're just like, here's the key code. Even though it was a couple of days before our lease starts, she said, go through, do your walkthrough. Their walkthrough is go through the property, check everything off, make sure everything works.
Condition of it, if there's
Condition
anything
report
that needs fixing.
So we were quite happy at this point, even if we were tired. So we drove straight to the place, did a walkthrough with our agent. We then did a secondary walkthrough and a video. So we've done a house tour of the house as it is without any of our furniture
we move in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought that would be really nice just to see it before. I mean, we won't have much furniture next week.
No, although we are buying gym equipment and a TV. So that's the furniture that we'll have that we'll keep, and potentially a new sofa as well, just because of the amount of space that we've got now.
And just to explain our unique situation, my work have been really good. Now, because our sea shipment has been delayed until early June, the earliest, we had two options. We could have either stayed in corporate housing for longer, which I didn't really want to do. The other option is what we're actually doing, find a place, and the company are covering the costs for rental furniture. So there's a company called Cort, C-O-R-T, that rent furniture, and you literally can rent furniture to fill a whole house, bedrooms, kitchen stuff, hoover, everything, your bed linen. It's crazy.
So
yeah, that's our chat. I mean, I thought it was important because we've been referring to it. Anyone that's been following my Instagram would have read my comments about it not being easy. It wasn't. It was just very frustrating. And I'm also working. I typically start from 7 a.m. most days, and to be dealing with that constantly and not knowing where we were going was stressful. And at this point, I just want to feel a bit more settled now.
The other thing that we'll probably cover off in another video is utilities aren't particularly easy to get.
That was the other part of setting this up, but we'll do that in another one.
A different video, because this one will be long enough. It's equally as frustrating.
But thank you. Please let us know if you're enjoying these catch-ups. I said before that we intend to do this weekly, so please continue to comment. And if you're any of the ones that have been watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. And I want people to say now that they've subscribed, because
yeah, so most of the people that are commenting back or sending us messages saying I subscribed because Ant said. Because I'm the only one that asks.
No, but yeah, please do subscribe and yeah, keep watching.